Today is former Vice Chairman of the Niti Aayog and top economist Arvind Panagariya. Mr. Panagariya, thank you so much for speaking with us here on the India Development Debate. We're also speaking at a time when the Finance Minister has been announcing one major reform after the other, the latest being a corporate tax cut, which has been in the works for years now, last announced 4 years ago with a certain path and direction finally has taken place. Do you think this is the major boost and the big bang reform that we've all been talking about?
First of all, pleasure to be with you, Tamanna. And yes, my answer is completely unequivocal on this. This is a bit of a reminder of the 1991 reforms to some degree, because it is a really very clean reform. All exemptions ended, and the tax rate reduced to effectively what will be about 25%, including the surcharges. And for fresh investment, it brings it down to 17%. So I think this is truly a mega reform. I'm delighted.
Let's talk a bit about what happens from here on. Of course, the Finance Minister has explained that the revenue foregone because of this measure and others that have been announced, including rolling back a tax on buybacks, etc., will cost about 1.45 lakh crore rupees. The next logical question is what happens to the fisc? What happens to the fiscal deficit target of 3.3%? Till what extent do we relax it? What is the real fiscal deficit target? And can we really afford this kind of a loss in revenue at this point?
Yeah. So I have two sort of responses to that. First, if we take the estimate as the likely impact, it would increase fiscal deficit, there is no doubt. But if there is ever a good reason to bite the bullet and let it be, it is this. I think this is a huge reform. So that's my sort of one response. So my second response also is that let's not underestimate the power of the reform itself. Number one, tax revenues may not fall as much, if the growth really does pick up. I admit that, these effects happen with a bit of a lag. So immediately we may not see the impact. But, over the longer run, certainly even medium run or even shorter than medium run, we'll see some impact, on economic activity. Also, I suspect that it will cut down some of the evasion that goes on, once the tax rate is something that's more reasonable. The incentive to evade tax payment sort of declines. Also remember that, in our country, there's a lot of bribe taking goes on. And when the tax rate is reasonable, then people will prefer to pay tax rather than, avoid it, evade it by paying bribes. So all that could eventually help actually in raising the revenues also. So therefore, the cuts that we are estimating might be not as large as it is being estimated right now. And finally, I suppose is my third point, which is that this is a sort of announcement effect. In the sentiment, the effect on sentiment is huge, and I think that should not be forgotten. The step is being taken at a time when the economy is a bit low, and therefore it was very much called for.
I'm going to come to you in a little bit of detail on that last point. I think it's a very important one because that's been the conversation, all day pretty much. Is this mostly a sentiment booster? And we've seen the impact of that sentiment booster on the markets completely, rocket fuel to the markets. Where does it go beyond a sentiment booster is the real question. Because now we know that corporates and the big corporates have a cushion. What they do with that cushion is the question. We're assuming this means it leaves them more money to increase investments. But will they increase investments when demand is still weak? What will they do with this money?
I'm an economist and I believe in prices. And so, if you got larger profits, you invest more. If that simple thing, it's like demand curve sloping down, meaning, if price falls, we all buy more. I think if that principle fails, then we're in a lot of trouble. So that's one. But I think more seriously, where I see really big prospects is that, I do hope that, we can carry this reform a bit forward. We have excluded right now from it the foreign companies. So supposedly this is applying only to domestic companies. But even so, foreigners can also incorporate in India and become a domestic company. So I think foreign investment could get boosted big time. And I don't know the fine print, but somehow if there is a way for example, foreign multinationals, say those currently operating in China, who are looking for alternative locations now, both because of the trade war that's going on between China and the United States and because of high wages, this could really be a big game changer that we all have been looking for. So that sort of would depend on whether companies that relocate to India can avail of, does the system provide enough flexibility in terms of, some sort of incorporation into India as a company and take advantage of the low rate. And currently, of course, they can take advantage of the 15% or what is effectively 17% rate. So that I think could be a huge game changer. And those who are investing into domestic companies, foreigners, which are into companies that are already domestic companies incorporated in India, I suspect that they would have more incentive. So I think all in all, also this is coincided by the way with the 25% basis point interest rate decline in the United States, which also changes the incentives a little bit in favor of India as opposed to the United States. So some capital may be wanting to move out of the United States anyway. And so I think all in all, I see this as a major substantive, impactful reform. It's not going to be just, limited to the sentiment effect alone.
No, absolutely. And I mean, no one is saying this is not a reform. I'm trying to understand that in the current situation, how far this will go to moving the needle. Because we saw after the tax cuts in 2017, 2018 in the United States, and you were just speaking about that situation, a large number of corporations did not boost investments as it was hoped. They did not increase employment as it was hoped. I'm not saying the same will happen here, but how do you ensure that this really makes a difference? I'm going to just add one more element to that question. And what do you do to improve consumption demand? Because at the end of the day, if people want to consume more, that's when companies are going to feel confident to increase their investments and set up more, manufacturing plants, etc.
Now you see, this is where you touch on an important point on the consumption side. Well, before I come to the consumption side, just one point, which is well, let me take the consumption side first. The very important thing is that the companies need to become competitive, export more. The world economy is very large, and if you become more profitable and you feel domestic consumption demand is not strong enough, go to the global market. That's a $17 trillion economy. $17 trillion. Remember, our total economic size in relation to that is 2.6 trillion. So the global export market is, something like 6 to 7 times our economic size. So be competitive, sell there, and surely if the profitability has gone up, it has gone. I mean, it's not that profits will accrue to you only if you sell in the domestic market to domestic consumers. Your profits will also be there and be subject to therefore lower taxation. You're exporting. So go export. I think, that is what the companies have to learn. They cannot rely, I mean, you can see the contrast. For example, even within auto sector, right? Rajiv Bajaj says that I export 40% of my two-wheelers. And therefore, if my domestic demand is a bit tepid, I go more aggressively in the export market.
Yeah.
The auto industry, as well as passenger cars, they have only 0.9% share in the global market. And so, they have not done their work and they have been not competitive enough. So either they shape up or make way for other industries that are more competitive, for manufacturers who are more competitive, who can hack it in the global markets. I think that is a message that needs to go to the industry also. So, this whole repetition by our industry that somehow it's government's responsibility to boost the consumption demand is all wrong. I
Yeah.
think, why should the government have to boost always the
No,
consumption demand?
no, okay, okay. I agree. I agree. The government by itself need not boost the consumption demand. They've given this sort of, tax cushion right before the festive season. At least some companies can pass this on in form of deep discounts and push demand over there. But you need wage growth also. You need wage growth, you need higher incomes, and it's not just the government's responsibility, but in this situation, when they're turning the wheels on, they have to look at that side as well. My simple question, Mr. Panagariya, is now what do we need to do on the consumption side, on the demand side?
Right? No, here I would say, if policy needs to play a role there, I would do it through the financial markets. I think one of the sources of weakness currently has been from the financial markets. Both the banking as well as the NBFC sector. They have been in a bit of weak state, and reforms are ongoing. But we can't underestimate, I'm afraid, the impact of the NPAs on the financial sector. It is just huge because on the one hand, those who previously were able to borrow just because they were well connected can no longer borrow. And so, the banks are now looking at the projects much more carefully. Similarly, the banks also, have to do better evaluation, and therefore there is issue there. Likewise, NBFC sector that has been in difficulty, but that's where I think the effort has to concentrate. I think the finance minister was right to do the 70,000 crore rupees of recapitalization as a part of one of our earlier packages. But perhaps we can do more of that. I don't like going, the government intervening at the sectoral level to address these demands, because I would rather that the consumers make that decision where they want to spend, on what product they want to spend. That should be their decision. But insofar as borrowing impacts the consumption demand, sure enough, one can go in and do something in the financial markets. So that's where I would focus.
Okay, so I want to come to you on the auto sector because I have spoken to you before and you've written about this as well. Why are you so tough on the auto sector, Mr. Panagariya?
No, I'm not
No,
tough. I'm being
on a lighter note, I'm saying, but you are quite tough. You're saying their claims are not credible.
Right.
They have been crying for a GST cut, which they have not got. The GST meeting, the council meeting has ended, and they've not got their cut. They're saying, at least tell us if you're not getting our cut so that people will come and buy. No one is buying because they're waiting for a GST cut. At least give us clarity. Now that's a fair demand.
But the government never said that they will cut the GST rate for the auto sector. I mean, if people are waiting, it's because the auto industry itself has conveyed that message to the people. So they can't blame it on the government for that. But, look, I am for a full GST reform. So, I would like to see actually us to move to two GST rates, hopefully, 12 and 18% kind of rates. But I certainly don't think that we have to do it for a specific sector. No, really, I know that you are taking it this in a lighter vein, but the auto industry does need to shape up. 60% tariff. No other industry has that kind of tariff. I've checked all the tariff schedules. India, they have the highest protection, and they have had it, even higher earlier. And for that many years, even if we start counting from 1991, which is when we started reforming our trade regime, because 91 before that, everybody had very high protection. But 30 years, they've got to do something. If they can't really be competitive after 30 years of such high protection, I think the time has come that consumers should get to import these cars.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mr. Panagariya. It's a pleasure speaking with you as always. Arvind Panagariya talking about, that road to $5 trillion. It seems like a bumpy one as of now. We still have till 2024. That's when the target has been set. But at least one of those major bumps has now been smoothed out with this corporate tax cut. Let's hope the direct tax code comes out soon, so all of us, you and me included, also now have to pay lower taxes. That's all the time we have this evening on the India Development Debate. Thank you so much for joining us.